Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, is a collection that goes above and beyond what I've normally seen in these types of retro re-releases. This really is more a celebration instead of just a collection. Now, I grew up with Atari. My first console was the 2600, and I do understand the importance of the history behind Atari and how the gaming industry was affected and impacted by them. But at the same time, there's not many old Atari games I find myself wanting to go back and play, especially not on the 2600 anyway. But I still find myself highly recommending this collection to anyone with an interest in retro gaming. This collection has over 100 games included. Around 40 of them are 2600 games, but there's also 25 arcade games included that I'd much rather play over the early console ports. But there's a nice mix here. Beyond that, you get a select few games for the Atari 800, 5200, 7800, the Lynx handheld, and the Atari Jaguar. It's amazing to see Jaguar games be a part of a collection like this. Typically, the system's fairly difficult to emulate, and Digital Eclipse, they've put in some work here so you can enjoy some of gaming's history's most horrible games, such as Cybermorph, Club Drive, and Fight for Life. But you also get stuff like Missile Command 3D, Tempest 2000, Ruiner Pinball, which I did have fun playing all those games for a bit. I mean, these games are a part of Atari's history, and even though not the most amazing games ever made, it is really awesome to have a little cabinet of curiosity here of tons of oddball games that a lot of us probably have never played before. So also among these games, we get a little section of Reimagined titles, which this includes stuff like Sword Quest Air World, the fourth game in the Sword Quest series, newly created by Digital Eclipse, which is based on the original design concepts of Todd Fry. And then we get truly reimagined games like a 3D remake of Haunted Houses, which I had a lot of fun playing that one. Neo Breakout, which is a new take on the classic game with a new two-player battle mode, which is kind of like tug of war. It was really fun. I only played against the computer, but it was interesting. Then you also get Quadra Tank, which is a remake of Combat, and a digitally reproduced version of Atari's LED handheld game Touch Me, which was kind of interesting. It's kind of like Simon. And then you also get Vector Sector, which uses vector graphics and incorporates gameplay from a bunch of Atari classics, which is really interesting. Then you also get Yar's Revenge Enhanced, which it's the classic game with a new coat of paint that on the fly, I found this cool. You could change back and forth between the classic graphics and the new enhanced look. So some really interesting stuff here has been included, and I think that's where this collection shines. Nothing here do I want to put hours of playtime into, but the curiosity to explore the history of Atari really has piqued my interest to at least check out everything the collection has to offer. Now, this is really not your typical compilation of retro games. The presentation here, it's an interactive Atari museum, essentially. A documentary that you get to experience firsthand. The biggest appeal to me is how they put this package together. You first boot it up, you're not greeted to a list of games at all. Instead, you have a timeline of Atari's histories presented to you in several different categories. In order to get to the games, you actually have to press a button to go to the library instead. Initially, I just wanted to jump into the games and start playing, but the interactive museum really grabbed my attention. Now, throughout the 5 categories, you'll go through the history of Atari's origin, the birth of their consoles, their highs and lows, Atari PC gaming, and into the 90s. Now, within these timelines, you're presented with tons of design documents, flyers, some commercials here and there, behind-the-scenes pictures, and a lot more. Plus, there's a bunch of videos that go over many interesting things in Atari's history, like drug use in the office, the crash of the video game industry, and the burial of the ET video game. These videos, they were really awesome to watch. They're professionally done and edited. They looked and sounded great watching them on my Nintendo Switch. Now, they really did jam-pack this collection full of intriguing stuff. I almost feel the games are the bonus this time instead of the historical extras. This is probably the most well put together collection I've ever seen. Now, it's not my favorite collection of games by any means. I'd choose plenty of other, retro collections of games over what were presented here, but just with the way they've presented everything with the historical aspect behind it, It's just so well done. It's hard to not recognize how Digital Eclipse is setting the standard here for future, retro collections. Instead of just a ROM dump of games nicely categorized and emulated, they really went that few extra miles to create something special. Not only entertaining, but educational and damn interesting in my opinion. Now, I could sit here and praise this collection all day, but I definitely have to bring up a couple cons. While the presentation is nice, I really do think it is, I'd have loved if the videos from the timeline were accessible on their own in like a separate category in order to find and play them all together. Maybe not like initially, but maybe if once you went through everything on the timelines, all the history stuff, it would have been nice as like a little bonus if you got everything categorized where you could easily access things instead of having to search for them type of thing. It's a minor gripe, which doesn't really take away from the presentation at all. But I just would have loved to play all the videos back to back, well, without having to go and look for them type of thing. Now, you do get a special unlock once you've checked everything out in the history sections. The collection has several unlocks in the game list that even gives you a little hints on how to unlock them, so that's kind of cool. A few little extra bonuses. But then I think the biggest con that I could bring up, and maybe others will as well, is going to be the game list. There's so many omissions I'd have loved to see, and I'm sure many others would have as well, especially on the Atari Lynx and Jaguar collections. Like, they're just missing so much. I suppose a lot of the games I could think of I'd like to have seen added to those systems probably have too many hurdles to jump through to include, so they wouldn't have been likely anyway. Probably like licensing issues and whatnot. But for the games that they did include for those two systems, I feel it doesn't really serve them justice. While we do have some interesting stuff, it's not really representative of what the actual libraries for those two consoles offered. But in the end, it's still a well-presented interactive history of Atari. And while I would have liked more, I'm extremely happy with what I've got. I mean, I bought this game myself. I can't complain. It really sets that standard for, future compilations, I think. If you're an Atari fan, this is a no-brainer. If you're somebody who's just kind of scratched the surface of Atari, doesn't really know too much, I would definitely recommend it as well. If you're just a retro gamer who loves gaming's history, even if you didn't grow up with Atari, I would still highly recommend this game as well. For $40, it's a very nice package in my opinion. I'm glad I bought it. Glad I got to experience it. I don't know if Digital Eclipse can continue, one-upping themselves, but yeah, I'm giving them props here. This is an amazing collection. Appreciate you guys. Catch you on the next one. Bye.